Okay, so we got two more videos left, approximately 13 shows, so let's, with 11 randoms, so let's crank down the random number generator, see what we roll next. It's gonna be 3 Reincarnated Aristocrat. Okay. The only reason I know about this show is because it's a studio mother show, and I've been really interested in their output as of late. They did that More Than Friend, Less Than Lover show from last year, I think it was. Let's see if this is a good follow-up.
Well, I gave it a shot, but I don't think I'm vibing with that one. What's the full title of this show? It is... Hold on, I'm looking it up again. It is... As a reincarnated aristocrat, I'll use my appraisal skill to rise in the world. And I got through the first episode of that. I didn't outright dislike it. There is some stuff to like about it. For one thing, the production's pretty cool to look at. I do have some gripes. I'm not a huge fan of the character designs. And some of the walk cycles look a little weird. But you know what? The shot composition and the framing looks really cool a lot of the time. Color design overall is really interesting. It's not a color palette that I see very often. Like there are some specific colors in there that I just don't see very often that look really cool. I like this kind of like brown and like teal kind of color palette. It's very interesting. And the characters are likable so far. I don't hate any of them, but there are a lot of like minor and major things with the overall like setup for this story that I'm just not a big fan of. Like the first thing that kind of clued me in that the world building might not be as cool as I was hoping for is they show a map of this continent and it's how it's divided up into 7 different kingdoms, but the borders are basically like all square borders. They're very like straight, rigid borders that aren't defined by geography in any way. And it's like, well, that's not realistic at all. These borders just look kind of lazy. Who came up with this? So once I saw that, I was like, okay, well, world building's going to be out the window. And you know what? I'll give it credit for not wasting time on. Oh, I completely forgot that this was an isekai, because it just did not waste its time at all with the isekaiing stuff. It was probably less than 30 seconds of time spent on the backstory, because it's really not that important. Although, at that point, why even have it be an isekai, I guess, other than to be an isekai? But I do have some major issues with this. One, I don't like this. I am on record many times as saying that I do not like fantasy worlds that run on stats. I think that's boring and uninteresting unless you are going like full-on game mechanics that are very intricate and very well defined. I don't like stat-based stuff, especially with this one, because the stats, they're just kind of there to be like, I can appraise people, but they don't. The stats that you see don't mean anything. Like, it showed us the stats for this Ritz character, this Ritz guy, and our main character reacts as if he's seeing like the second coming of Christ. But if you actually look at the stats, it's just they don't make any sense, and there's nothing about them that makes you think, oh, this guy's super impressive. It's very convoluted looking. And also, just on the level of, I don't like that people are being defined by preordained stats. I don't like that as a concept. And then another thing is like, okay, so this Reed's character is basically like, he's a different race than the other people there, and so there is a racism thing, but then he like shows that he's like really strong, and he beats the Lord of the House in a duel, and then immediately, like, they're really like hammering on the racism for it, and then like he beats the Lord of the Castle, or the Lord of the House or whatever, and all like at the turn in everybody's demeanor, it just reminds me of I forget which comedian did this, but it's like, and suddenly he wasn't racist anymore. Like, it's fucking immediate. And no, that's not unfortunately that's not how racism works. Sorry. Yeah, I'm not gonna vibe with this one. Unfortunately, some parts of it look promising, but overall, it's just a bit of a mess.
Okay, Reincarnated Aristocrat off the list, unfortunately. Down to 10 random shows left. So let's see what we get next. It is 5. What is 5? Monster. I've heard this one is notoriously bad. I heard the OP once and I cringed really hard. Let's see what this show's about.
Okay, so hear me out. Somehow, against all odds, I watched all of Monster. I don't fully understand why I like this show. Just by every like conceivable measure, by like every obvious point I could make, the show is not quote unquote good. Like, for starters, it's Studio Dean, and this is like this isn't like Konosuba Studio Dean where they got like a really cool director behind it. This is Studio Dean ass Studio Dean. Like, this is the kind of show that we made fun of Studio Dean for. This is not a good looking show. It's not the worst looking show that I've seen this season. In fact, I don't think it's that by a long shot, but it is not good looking in any conceivable way. The character designs are very generic and basic, so occasionally not great. There's a couple, not many, but there's a couple jarring elements to the color design that really make it kind of weird to look at. It does not move well. In fact, the only action scene that I could consider to be good was some of the stuff in the final episode. It's not a good looking show, and it's not a particularly well written show either. Thankfully, it's the exact opposite kind of isekai that I was expecting. Based on the fact that this guy reincarnates as a goblin, I was expecting this to be like an edgy, beat on the MC nonstop isekai. But it's actually the exact opposite, where he becomes super ultra powerful. This show is basically, but it still has like a weird kind of edge to it. This show is basically like Kirkland brand Slime if you accidentally dropped it in a bucket of Tanya the Evil. it's because it's the main character is basically like chaotic neutral Rimuru, where he's not like well, he does horribly immoral things. We'll get to that. But he's not a quote-unquote bad guy. Because he's just kind of in it for himself and what makes his tribe stronger, I guess. He eats everything that he kills, and that, like, basically, like Rimuru and Re-Slime, that's how he gains additional powers. But he gains so many more powers than Rimuru in this show. And they just, like, fucking rapid fire them at you every time he gets a new power. Sometimes they'll do, like, 20 of them at once. And he doesn't use even a fraction of what he gains over the course of the series. But he does gain some interesting powers. Like, all of the weird bug powers that he gets are pretty cool. The pretty basic ones, like... sorry, it's very late at night right now. Like, the very basic ones, like regeneration, come a bit later on, but they're still used interestingly, I guess. But also, like, this is a... Well, there are some good things about the writing. I mean, I wouldn't have finished this show if I didn't think there was something good here. Like, I do think that despite being incredibly, massively fucking overpowered, they do find a way to challenge our MC enough for it to feel meaningful, I guess. Our main MC, Goburo. I'm going to call him Goburo, even though he changes names like 3 times over the course of the series. I'm gonna go ahead and say that that's not something you should, like, ever do when you're writing a show or any kind of thing. I know there aren't, like, hard and fast rules when you're writing, but you should not constantly be changing characters' names, because it gets real fucking confusing. There were points where I was just completely losing track of who the fuck they were talking about because they just kept changing people's names. And it was such a baffling decision that I don't know how, like, you don't catch that issue. What else? Like, there's... Also, the pace is lightning fucking fast, so there is no sense of, like, character development in any way whatsoever. There's barely a sense of characterization, aside from, like, 3 or 4 characters, probably. Like, most characters don't really have a personality other than whatever their job title is. But on the other hand, I think the fact that it is so incredibly fast-paced is what got me through this entire thing in a single day. It's certainly not slow. I'll give it that. It's certainly not slow. Like, there's so much weird, bizarre writing choices about the show. Like, so, eventually, our main character, Goburo, he has, like, a harem by, like, episode 3 of a bunch of different girls from different races. And you don't learn most of their names until, like, episode 10. Because in episode 10, they start giving birth to his children. and suddenly that makes them relevant enough to have names. That is the funniest piece of misogyny that I have ever seen. It's like it's intentional. Like there's this red-haired girl who basically looks exactly like Shirayuki from Snow White with the red hair, but like trimmed down to be Studio Dean friendly in terms of animation. She does not get a name for this entire show. Goburo just keeps referring to her as the short red-haired girl, which is longer to say than her name. She just doesn't give her name for the entire show. They don't tell us what her name is for the entire show. This is insane. It's at some point, I feel like some of this has to be intentional. Like, there has to be some kind of intention behind it. Because there are so many things that line up perfectly to be the most bizarre, insane fucking writing choices that I've ever seen. That I'm still watching. And then there's the gigantic fucking elephant in the room of a content warning, I guess. Our main character rapes people. Like, there are multiple instances, at least one. At the very minimum, he rapes one person. It is heavily implied that he rapes several other people, or that he lets other people rape other people. And somehow, I feel less bad about this than the other isekai who I'm just tired of name dropping that had a sexual harassment scene in it. Because this show doesn't try to make excuses. It's still bad, but they don't dress it up as him, like, overcomings of him having some kind of fucking neuroses or having, like, trauma in his backstory or whatever. He's just a bad dude. In his previous life, before he reincarnated as a goblin, he was a bad dude, potentially a serial killer. I think he was actually an assassin, but they really don't go into a whole lot of detail about that. But he killed people probably for money in his past life, and potentially did some other stuff. So they kind of prime you for this being a not good dude, and yet they still manage to soften it somehow by being like, because it's like, it's the trope of goblins kidnapping human women and impregnating them so that they can bear goblin children. And they basically frame it as, like, as he's growing up in this goblin society, he, like, recognizes that, and he's like, well, I kind of don't want to touch that. Except he does. At one, like, he rapes a noble human lady. The visuals and the sound and the dialogue, even the dialogue to a certain extent, kind of frame it with porn logic. We're back to, like, gushing over magical girls. Porn logic does come into play quite a bit in this show. Where, like, they frame it through, like, rape porn logic, but it's still rape, and it's gross. But I don't know, maybe it's just the fact that maybe it's because the show moves so fast that it's easy to forget about, or maybe it's just because the way it's shot is just not very memorable, and I can just go, I pretend not to see. Like, what the fuck is this show? Why was I able to make my way through this entire show? I don't fucking understand. I don't understand why I like this show. I have theories, like the fact that it's so fast-paced, the fact that it's kind of unapologetic about its amorality, the fact that it's not trying to write itself up, like make excuses for itself, and the world building, I guess, like, it doesn't necessarily have very complex world building, but it just throws so much at you that I honestly, that's like just different enough to make it interesting. Like, they have this system where it's like, so like in Re-Slime, you know how like when Rimuru gave the ogres names, they like evolved into like whatever their evolved form of an ogre was. That happens in this show by like leveling up, like it's fucking Pokemon. But there are so many variations of what goblins can evolve into that it just becomes kind of interesting to see how many different things they come up with and how many different specialties there are. And just like like apparently humans can level up into things and just acquire like curses, sort of. They refer to them as jobs. They don't just tell you what a job is, because one of the jobs in this, it's called like Noir Soldat, and nothing is described about this job other than it's the red-haired girl who gets it, and it's basically like she has to periodically eat monster meat or she'll die. Like she's fucking Webby from Don't Starve. This... And I think that's simultaneously one of the things that I hate and I actually kind of appreciate about this show is it does not explain fucking anything. Like, very occasionally you will get like a detailed explanation of stuff, but for the most part, it is like a 1 or 2 sentence explanation and it's off to the fucking races. It is just not wasting any time. And I gotta respect it, I guess. It didn't bog itself down with unnecessary details because it didn't really have enough details to be detailed. This show baffles me. Even down to like the music, specifically the OP. Ding ding dong like King Kong. What the fuck? How did you come up with that? Are you Japanese Eminem? What's going on here? Although I will say, I actually kind of like the ED a bit, and the OP actually did kind of get kind of catchy as it went on, and I started singing along "Ding Ding Dong" like King Kong. It's fucking, oh my fucking god. And actually the soundtrack's not bad. Actually, it's not like interesting. It's not particularly well composed or intriguing, but it gets the job done. It's a guitar heavy and string heavy soundtrack, adventure soundtrack. It's this show gets the job done. This is a fucking junk food anime. Like, you know it's not good. You can look at it and it looks like shit. You smell it and it just smells almost not like food. But then when you put it in your mouth, like you put a McDonald's cheeseburger in your mouth and you go, well, this half of this tastes entirely artificial and does not taste like a thing that should be edible. But at the same time, it's a McDonald's cheeseburger. It's got that secret balance of flavorings that just rewires your fucking brain and turns you into an addict. It's got the sauce. What else can I say? The only thing that I kind of wish I do... Like, I'm not going to say there's nothing about this show that I wouldn't change. There are some massive structural things and massive, like, prose things that I would change, along with the animation. But the only, like, minor detailed thing that I would suggest is, like, show more of the fucking, I guess? Because, again, he sleeps with 6 different women by the end of episode 3, like all together, because he slept with a dryad woman earlier in the episode. So 7. So he sleeps with 7 different women in one episode. And presumably he keeps fucking them over the course of the series. Like, on day 69, nice, they do end up fucking. That's another thing. It feels so. This show is structured almost like a journal entry, kind of, where it's like every new scene starts like a new day, like the days since this guy was born as a goblin, which was only like 4 months, by the way. The entirety of this show takes place over 4 months, and it's fucking insane. But every single time a new day starts, you get like a title card that says like day 19 or whatever, and you get a musical sting that goes bum bum. And once it happens like 10 times in an episode, it gets really fucking annoying. What was I was talking about the sex before this. I wish there was more visible sexy time, because at least that would have like made the fact that this show looks like shit a little more tolerable. I'm baffled. Bro is flabbergasted. If not for the actual rape, I think I would actually consider this to be a good show, because like fuck objective measures of criticism, fuck standards, fuck normal means of writing. I enjoyed watching this show, except for the rape and except for all the other things that actually annoyed me, like the weird title card thing and the fact that it looked like complete ass. I binged this entire show in a day. I don't fully understand why. And I think this show is getting a season 2. I'm not entirely sure. But I might stick around for a season 2 if it gets one. Man, this sure was an anime.
Okay, Re-Monster is complete. And we're going to put it a little bit above Sandland in the number 23 spot with a strong 6. I enjoyed that show. I still fully don't understand why, but I enjoyed that show. In any case, let's go back to our randoms now. What do we got? 9 random shows left. So let's see what our random number generator says. 7. Vampire Dormitory. This is another one that was like kind of hot right when it started, and then no one talked about it afterwards. Let's see what it's about.
Yeah, not good. This one's not good. First of all, okay. So the first episode, there's supposed to be like a twist, where it's revealed that the main character who has been presenting as a boy is actually a girl. I got halfway through the episode, so I didn't get to that twist. But here's the thing. A, the voice acting gives it away immediately, because we get a flash forward to this character trying to kill themselves and then regretting it, and then you hear the internal monologue of "I don't want to die," and it is so very clearly a girl's voice. So the character looks androgynous enough and but also feminine enough to be like, okay, this is obviously a girl. And then it flashes back, and everyone just starts calling this person a boy. Like, this isn't even like a gender identity thing. This is literally like just a girl presenting themselves as a boy. For some reason, they haven't really gotten to it. I don't know why. Maybe it is a gender identity thing, and there's a reveal later. I highly doubt it, because this is a trashy vampire, probably shoujo romance manga. And the writing's not good. It's very basic, and there's really no hook to anything at all. The color design is garish in a way that I have not experienced before. It is overly glossy, and the colors are overly saturated in all the wrong ways. It looks polished, but it feels off because the color directing is not good. The lighting's fine, actually, but it's not a pleasant show to look at unless you really like the cute boys. And I have seen way cuter boys in other anime. Just my preference, I guess. This was so... The worst thing I could say about the show is it was boring. I watched a half episode and I was so fucking bored. Nothing interesting happened. And I say that having this episode for an episode that opened with someone trying to kill themselves. Because it's just not interesting. It's just not presented in an interesting way. It's so bland and boring, and I'm done.
Okay, Vampire Dormitory off the list. Let's roll again and see what we get next. Let's see, it is 8. Okay, My Oni Girl. This is the last movie on the list. I think it's on Netflix. Didn't hear anyone talk about it after it came out, but you know what? No one talked about... Well, actually, no. People did talk about Drifting Home after it came out. I think this is a Colorito show, so at least it'll look pretty. Let's give it a go.
That one's a swing and a miss, I think. I got about 45-ish minutes into My Oni Girl, which is a little less than halfway through the film. It's boring, man. It's really not interesting in any way whatsoever. Well, not in any way. There are some things that might be good by the end. Key word being might. Like, I do like how our main character, Hiragi, is initially characterized. Like, he's basically like a can't say no kind of guy. He just feels compelled to help everyone, regardless of how that affects him. But he also has, like, things that he wants to do aside from that, like, when he... Well, this is completely unrelated, but, like, actually, these two plot things aren't really related as far as I can see. Like, he also has this conflict with his dad, where, like, his dad's just kind of, like, being a parent and, like, not really taking Hiragi's desires into consideration regarding his education. Like, he's pulling him out of a summer course, like at some kind of cram school or something, into giving him a private tutor instead, which would have more impact if I felt like Hiragi had, like, a solid friend group that he hung out with, and wanted to go to that summer course with, but he really doesn't. They don't show that at all, so the conflict isn't all that motivating, aside from overbearing parent. The most interesting stuff about this movie is probably the supernatural stuff, just because it's fun supernatural stuff. We got this Oni girl trying to find her mom, and we got these weird serpent things flying around eating people's unhappiness or hidden feelings. Something? I don't know. Because the girl doesn't seem to know what they are either. So it's a mystery as to what these things are doing. I think there is something here in terms of, like, an interesting metaphor of, like, people hiding their feelings, something supernatural. There's something there. I just don't think this show is really tapping into it. Because I feel totally uncompelled to finish this movie, because I don't think there's going to be something interesting or rewarding at the end of this plot. There's nothing being built up right now. Like, we're in the road trip section of this movie, and a lot of this boy can't say no kind of stuff is just sort of falling by the wayside. We're not developing that plot in any way. In fact, we're actually, like, there was a subsection of this where they're staying, like, at an inn, and it actually becomes, like, a benefit to them. In fact, actually, once they hit the road, him being a yes man is nothing but a benefit to them. Like, I thought they were going to be, like, because when he's in school, it's sort of like a disruptive element to him, where he's, like, him constantly helping everyone out gets in his way sometimes. But now they're just using it as, like, showing how it's a positive element. So I don't know what they're trying to do with this element of his character. I'm sure if I finish the film, I would be able to figure it out, but I kind of don't want to, because the characters are kind of boring. The girl, she's a little precocious, and that's about it. She's pretty boring. Also, these two, like, this kid ran away from home, and everyone except his dad seems to be, like, totally chill about this. At one point, the kid calls home to let his mom know that he's fine, and she's just like, okay, well, why don't you be back? Alright, cool. And then, like, when the dad shows up at the inn where he was later, the innkeeper's like, I only serve customers. Come on, chill out, have a break. I'm like, no! I'm sorry, but the dad's in the right here. I'm surprised there are not, like, police reports out for this child who ran away from home. I mean, again, this is Japan, so I guess it's a little different. It's a overall safer country, I guess. But so I guess this is my Americanness seeping in, but I feel like the dad is in the right here for being a bit worried. Instead, it's trying to... I feel like they're trying to frame it as him being overbearing in relation to the tutoring thing. But these are two entirely different situations. This is a weird movie. You know how this is a weird movie? We hit an incest side quest within like the first half hour. And that doesn't get resolved at all. It just kind of pops up, and then our two main characters sort of run away because of the serpent thing. Weird, man, very weird. What's going on, Colorado? Speaking of Colorado, this is a Studio Colorado film. Probably their least impressive one that I've seen so far visually. Like, this is the studio that did Penguin Highway and Burn the Witch, Pokemon Twilight Wings. So I haven't seen Penguin Highway. Most of what I've seen from Colorado is their shorts. So like Burn the Witch and Twilight Wings. And a lot of their shorts, they're like shorts, like Polet no Isu and Confession. So they've got this very bouncy, cartoony kind of style, but for their movies, it seems to be like a little bit more refined. They also did Drifting Home, which apparently, I looked this up on their like Wikipedia page. They signed like a 3-film deal with Netflix, and so like this is the Oni Girl is the second in that that 3-film contract. Drifting Home was the first. I forget which season it was. I think it was the 2022 fall wrap-up show. Might have been around there where I did Drifting Home. Somewhere around there. And I liked that film a lot. It was fun. That was a fun film. I don't remember a whole lot about the animation, but it's certainly sticking out in my... Some of the images of it are sticking out a lot more in my mind than this film does. Because, like, this film's not bad looking. It's... I would give it a film quality rating. It's not like they didn't, like, just decide to paste a bunch of anime TV episodes together and call it a movie. This is film quality. I'm looking at it right now behind the camera. The backgrounds are really nice, actually. But the designs aren't they're just not hitting the way that I was hoping they would. And Colorado has this their walk cycles can be kind of weird sometimes. Just not in how not in like the motion. How do I describe it? They tend to be very high frame count walk cycles, and sometimes they look weird as a result. I don't know if they're actually doing like full key animation, like hand drawn, or if they're like doing frame interpolation. It just looks weird sometimes. But again, this isn't a bad looking movie by any stretch. It's got some great color work. Again, the backgrounds are nice, and the action scenes have been really solid, but they also kind of just feel like generic Colorado action scenes where they're this very fluid, fast movement. So, yeah, I'm just not vibing with my Oni Girl, I guess. Maybe the third film in this trilogy will round it out. I do need to go back and try the other Colorado films, though. I still haven't seen Penguin Highway, and I still haven't seen A Whisker Away, which I heard a lot of people didn't like. And I think Penguin Highway is their most critically acclaimed film so far. I'll go watch those at some point, but for now, I don't think I'm going to finish my Oni Girl. It's just not hitting for me.
Okay, my Oni Girl, unfortunately, coming off the list. We're down to 9 shows now. I didn't even realize we were down to the last 10 before that. Only got 9 shows left. Let's see if there's any more surprises. But there's 7 randoms left, so let's see what we roll next. 4. The banished former hero lives as he pleases. Okay. Either going to be isekai or plain old fantasy. I'm going to guess plain old fantasy for this one. With some video game mechanics. Haven't heard anyone talk about this show at all. So let's give it a watch.
Okay, no. Just no. I got like a third or a quarter of the way into the first episode of The Banished Former Hero Does As He Pleases, or whatever the fuck it's called. This show... Okay, so... Immediately, the show hammers on you, like, you, the heir to this family, you've not raised your level at all. You're still level 1, even though you're already 15 years old, and your blessing bestowed you no gifts at this ceremony. You are worthless. Goodbye. Be cast out of the house. And then immediately after that, it's like, nope, he actually has a ton of abilities, actually, because he was reincarnated from a past life. I'm going to assume that it's just by a manner of, like, I don't know how this world's leveling system functions, and I don't fucking care how it functions. Like, it's another one of those stories where it's like, the metric by which people are measured shows that he is worthless, but oh, actually, he has, like, all of the best powers, actually. Like, he's just summoned 100 magical swords and is attacking, like, giant rock dogs with them. And he can... I'm assuming, based on the title, that he was just hiding his power level so that he could be free from the aristocracy and live like a slow life. The fact that I was able to... I'm gonna say with almost 100% I would put money down on that being the plot. And the fact that I was able to predict that so easily makes me angry, because this character is also incredibly fucking boring so far. Also, the show looks like dog shit. It's fucking terrible. Like, I feel like I don't have a lot of leeway to talk about that after finishing Re-Monster, but I also acknowledged that Re-Monster also looked like shit. So, I'm not being a hypocrite, I swear. Like, there's, like, there was a shot of, like, these rock dogs just walking towards the camera, and you could see the asset of the dog just kind of sliding across the ground during its walk cycle. It was so fucking funny. And there was a part where, like, it's like a shot looking upwards from, like, a princess's view or a noble's view of him, like, holding the rock dog above her head as it's about to attack her. but if you look at where his hand is, he's not actually holding the dog at all. He's just kind of got his hand up there, and then the dog is like above his, just like barely above his hand, but it looks like he's supposed to be holding the dog. It's so terrible. This sucks. I don't even, based on the fact that he has powers from his past life, I don't think this is an isekai per se, so that's why I'm not breaking the bell out. But it is a reincarnation story that sucks a lot of ass.
Hey guys, you want to know who did who the studio was that did the Banished former hero? It's Studio Dean. Fucking incredible. And holy shit, that score. Wow. Anyway, Banished former hero coming off the list. Let's see what we roll next. We got 6 shows left. It's gonna be 2. Chillin' in Another World. I haven't heard anyone talk about this show. It got a little bit of hype from Crunchyroll when it first started airing. Let's see what it's about.
You know what's more boring than a really generic isekai? A really generic isekai where the main character doesn't even come from our world. He just comes from one fantasy world and gets isekai'd to another fantasy world where the only difference seems to be that there's less racism? What the fuck? Who? That's so fucking boring. That's so incredibly fucking boring. What is wrong with you? Like, you can't even do anything with that. It's like, I came from a world where demi-humans were being discriminated against and they had slave contracts, and now I'm in a world where people are just fine with demi-humans. What do you do with that in terms of a story? Now, if you flipped it, there's a story. A guy who comes from a world with no racism and enters a world with racism and slavery and such. That's a story idea. But the way they have it, there's no fucking conflict. There's nothing except the fact that he's just got summoned to this new world and he has no way back to his old world, and the kingdom doesn't actually have any use for him because he has, hey, oh, look, it's another show where skills are measured by stats, and that's probably not going to fucking mean anything because this dude's going to be super cool and badass at some point, I bet. Who cares? Who the fuck cares? He's a fucking boring dude. Holy shit, why am I more angry at this one than Banished Former Hero? Maybe because that one was just like complete fucking slop. This one's just incredibly mediocre to look at. Not interesting in any way whatsoever. I guess the main character kind of has an interesting design that I haven't really seen before in a main character. But it's not like a cool design. He's just got longer hair. It's... fucking... I'm angry. I'm angry at this show for doing this to me. Also, in his old world, like, this guy was whipping one of the demi-humans for not moving fast, but, like, he was whipping him while he was holding the cargo that he was moving. Like, that's just bad slave practice, man. You whip them when they're not holding expensive stuff because you're going to make them drop that. Fucking hell. This show. Fuck it.
And I didn't even get to the big titty wolf girl voiced by apparently Rie Kugimiya, which would have been awesome. But it's a shame this show sucks. Chillin' in Another World. What's the full title of this one? Chillin' in Another World with level 2 super cheap powers. Fuck off. Get off the list. It's time for an end cap. Girls Band Cry. Okay, this was the big hit of the season purely because it was unlicensed and turned out to be really good. Let's see if I vibe with it. Let's watch another music anime.
So this counts as a redemption for me not liking My Go, right? Okay, I just finished up all of Girls Band Cry. Crunchyroll, High Dive, whoever, y'all dropped the ball by not licensing this one. This was the big unlicensed show of the season. There were a few other ones, but they were all pretty shit. This one's actually really good. Though I guess just from a outsider's perspective, I can understand why this one didn't get licensed, because it's a brand new IP that's a full CG series. Now, on the one hand, that seems like a bit of a risk, but also, A, it's from Toei, and B, if I recall correctly, it's from the director of Love Live Sunshine, so he's already gotten experience with music anime, and it was written by Juki Hanada, who's the big, one of the, I have a Love Live script that I'm working on right now. I believe I referred to him as the Duke of if Mari Okada is the Queen of Melodrama, then Juki Hanada is at least a Duke in the same kingdom, is what I believe I wrote. And he's the guy who, he also wrote he was also the series composition guy for Euphonium. So, big melodrama writer. Which definitely comes into play in this show. So, without a lot of looking at the show, I can understand why it might have gotten passed over, but boy, did they miss out, because this was a damn good show. Let's start with the melodrama. Holy shit, this is one of those girls screaming their feelings at each other shows, which I would say I am half and half with. It's gotta be real good writing and real good directing, I would say. Which, fortunately, I like both the writer and director. This is a lot of it comes from our main character, Nina, who is the most melodrama anime high schooler I have ever seen, potentially. She is, just the embodiment of wistful youth screaming their feelings at the world. But because the writing is so good, it fucking works. At one point I tweeted, "This girl is such a pain," affectionately, because she's got a bit of a self-righteous streak to her, but she's also kind of dumb socially in a lot of ways, and she's not good at immediately grasping all the angles that you can come at a given situation from, and on top of that, she is very quick to immediately assess the situation from her own perspective, which leads to a lot of conflict, in particular with the other lead, with the other person that she initially starts to form this band with, Momoka, who is the former member of another band who Nina was really into. So we got this kind of cool fan-artist dynamic that turns into an artist-artist dynamic. So that was pretty interesting. But there's and I think Momoka is a really great contrast to Nina in that regard, in that she's been burned before for trying to be a little more outspoken, I guess you could say. And now she's just sort of trying to like bottle that up a little bit and just be like, trying to be a little less, not less opinionated. That's the other character. Momoka is trying to be like more aloof about the situation and just more be like, shikata ganai, can't be helped. Trying to have that kind of vibe to her. And oh boy, those attitudes do not like existing in the same room as each other. So the first like probably 8 episodes are just Nina and Momoka clashing constantly over how they want this band to evolve and what they want this band to be. And none of this drama feels like manufactured. Like none of this like when there are misunderstandings, it is very obvious why the misunderstanding is happening. And the misunderstanding happens because one of the characters is bottling up all of her feelings because she doesn't want to push people away. And the other character is just shouting nonstop because that's just what she do. But despite that, they are able to connect on a level that is deeper than just superficial personality clashes, and they end up being able to draw the best out of each other because, in particular, because Nina just absolutely fucking refuses to give up or take no for an answer from Momoka because she kind of just intuitively understands that something's wrong, but she doesn't quite understand what's wrong, so she just fucking pounding away at the problem until she figures it out, which, on the one hand, creates a lot of strife within the band, but on the other hand, it's very just so power of friendship coded in a very fun and very endearing way. You can say that about, in their own different ways about the rest of the band as well. We have Subaru, who's this, their drummer slash pretending to be an actor into acting to please her superstar grandma. Then we have I forget what the short-haired girl's name is. I can't believe I forgot what her name is. Shoot. Oh well. Well, I did really enjoy, like, I thought she got like a little episode of like what her deal is. Like, she is the character of like, she is just very sharp-tongued and extremely opinionated and perfectionisty about her music, and that caused the breakup of her previous band. And now she was kind of hesitant to do that with this band, but immediately Nina's like, hold on, chotomate, motherfucker. Why you lying to me? Why you always lying? I don't know why I'm in such a weird mood for this video. So, really enjoyed that arc. And then we have Rupa, who's just kind of probably the most mature one out of everyone. Might be the oldest, I'm not sure. And she just is kind of very soft-spoken and kind of mom-coded in a lot of ways. And just being like, now what? Now how does that make you feel? Just kind of that vibe to her. I dig it. It's a nice counterbalance to a bunch of other members of the group just screaming at each other constantly. But then even like on the conceptual level of some of these characters are like, we have a lot of characters that are just like high school dropouts, which you almost never see in anime. Like, that's almost taboo of sorts. Like, in terms of like anime tropage, one could say. Like, high school is just sort of like sacred ground that is supposed to be loved and appreciated for its fleeting nature. But we have one character who was bullied into leaving school. We have one character that just kind of dropped out to pursue her dreams. So I think it's just refreshing to see this perspective. And it also lends a lot to how emotionally immature some of these characters are. Like, we also have, like, we have an age a pretty decent age difference between Nina and Momoko. Momoko's 20, I believe, and Nina's 17. So there is like a maturity gap, but also both of them are technically high school dropouts. So it makes a lot of their actions make a lot more sense just from like how they interact with the world kind of standpoint. How they interact with, like, let's say, parent figures, with Nina's complicated relationship with her family. It's just pretty well written show overall, and like the overall arc of the show was kind of interesting. Like, it has, like, it kind of reaches its like peak at like episode 11, and then I was like, what the fuck comes after this? And then like episode 12 just kind of charts the course, and then they kind of have like their release like backfires, and so it's kind of just like a drop off in terms of like their rise. Not like a complete like failure, but it is a failure that this show, well, at least a monetary, a financial failure on their part, in terms of them losing this contest essentially to Diamond Dust, the new Diamond Dust that they've been kind of competing against for this entire show. And so it was very interesting from just, and in terms of it being, trying to be a little more realistic, I guess. It's like, not everyone gets like the happy ever after, and then we were successful the whole time kind of ending. This one kind of ends with a, yeah, this venture failed, and now we're just going to pull out of our agency and go indie again and try it again. So that was really interesting. I do feel like they tried to cram a lot into that final episode, so it did feel a little rushed in some places, but I think they kind of wrapped up everything that they needed to wrap up. And I think this show's also fairly good at making it people realize that the bad guys in this show are still, not that they aren't bad guys, but that they are human, and some of them are trying to understand the mistakes they made, and others are trying to get people to understand their perspective. Whether it's like Nina's dad or it's Hida, who is one of Nina's former friends from high school. So yeah, the writing, I don't think, with Juki Hanada in it, there's not a whole lot of doubt to it. I keep saying how good he is. He's not like my favorite writer or anything. There are plenty of shows that I don't think well, I can't name them off the top of my head, but I know there are some shows where I just did not like his writing style for it, but it also could have been because there was a bad director attached to it, which this show did not, because I think it's Kazuo Sakai, I believe, and he is the Love Live Sunshine director, as I mentioned, which makes a lot of sense when you look at the show visually. Now, this is a full CG series, and to be honest, it has a texture that I don't think I have seen before in anime. Well, except in one place. Which it's very funny that my dad at one point walked in on me to ask me something while I was watching this, and he asked me if I was watching Ruby, which I think that's honestly kind of a good comparison, in that both, like, the shows are not perfect visually. They definitely have some faults to them in some areas, although I do think Girls Band Cry is definitely a bit more polished than Ruby. But both of them are very, very stylistic in terms of their CG presentation. Like, they really know how to make this stuff look expressive instead of lifeless. A lot of that comes from, like, the facial animations and the bounciness of the way that the characters move, just this sheer energy of it. And I mentioned again that this is from the Love Live director, the Sunshine director, because there are a lot of like gremlin mugging the camera kind of moments, especially with Subaru. She is definitely the character that they give all, like, the meme-y kind of faces to, that are just very funny in the moment. But also, like, this is just, it's, the show is not, like, the movement is not entirely clean, the compositing is not entirely perfect, but they really go all out on making very accentuated movements, very, like, they really wanted to bring a lot of energy to this production. So, which, again, I guess to compare it to something like, I'm gonna get hate for it, but I still don't like it, with My Go, where it's just sort of a very standard looking CG production that doesn't have a lot of oomph behind it. It doesn't have as much style or pizzazz, or just, like, really nailing you with energy. This show has all of that, and a much better, I'm not going to say a much better color palette, but it is a better color palette. It has a very, very, like, I was going to say black and red tones, but then there's, like, some, like, beiges in there too. It's just got, it fits for what it's trying to do, I will say. And like, it's not 100% CG either. There are moments where they do, like, go into 2D, especially, like, the opening is in 2D for the most part. And then there are some shots here and there where it's like they didn't have time to put a full model together for this particular character, so it's just in 2D. But weirdly enough, the CG actually looks better than the 2D most of the time. Like, even the OP, like, I look at the character designs in the OP, and it's just like, this doesn't look nearly as iconic as the CG versions, I guess. Maybe it's just like a exposure bias kind of thing, but I really do vibe with the designs for these characters. Nina in particular, I really fucking love her design. It's just absolutely perfect for her precocious, bratty kind of personality and self-righteousness and such. Just a really dang good looking show, and a great sounding show overall too, with some caveats actually. I love the music in this. It's definitely, there aren't a lot of ones that stick out in particular besides the OP. I will say the festival performance, episode 11, was probably my favorite of, like, the in-universe performances. But it's like, it's some nice rock music. I will say two minor complaints on the audio front. One, some of the voice acting is a little bit on the rough side, which is to be expected because these are brand new voice actresses. None of them have done anime before. So some of it sounds a bit rough. Subaru in particular sounds a little bit rough sometimes. And also, weirdly enough, sometimes the background music is balanced a little too high, like in comparison to the dialogue. Like it just feels a little, the background music just feels a little too forward sometimes, and it's like it gets a little distracting. But oh, should probably talk about the fucking concerts. The concerts are pretty friggin' spectacular. They're not the best animated concerts, but the way that they are shot, the way everything is directed, the way the camera moves, the color usage, these like this abstract use of colors, like a lot of times throughout the series when Nina is having like this stewing anger kind of moments, you see like these red and black lines radiating out of her, and those look really cool. And the concert scenes just have these expressive color ideas, and again, it is very Love Live. If you look at how a lot of these concerts are shot, which I'm a fan of, the camera moves very fast to cover up when the character models are not moving quite as they should be. And when they are really solid, they're put front and center to look really solid. I'm sorry, just as another like character note, it is so very Nina to just have these rambling screeds that she goes on before every performance. It is so incredibly her, and if I was in the audience, I would fucking hate it. I would be like, what the fuck are you doing? So, yeah. I wasn't as in love with this show as everyone else, but I liked it a hell of a lot more than My Go. I say that just because that's the easiest comparison to make. I would say it's relatively close to Jellyfish for me, but I think it's still a little bit below Jellyfish. I know that's another one that it got compared to a lot since they both air in the same season, and they're both about becoming a band in a modern internet climate. Also, I think Girls Band Cry is the first anime that I've seen mention Let's Plays by name. Very interesting and very modern. Keeping up with the times and cultural trends, I love it. But yeah, Jellyfish just had a lot more literally me stuff in it, so I just vibe with it a little more. But yeah, I really, really enjoyed Girls Band Cry. This is another one of those shows where it's like, if I didn't try everything, and if I didn't pay attention to I didn't pay attention to what other people were talking about from each season, I would never have picked this up, but I'm real glad I did. This is some good music anime.
Alright, Girls Band Cry is complete. And we're going to put it just right in between Jellyfish and Konosuba. And this one's getting a decent 8. Really, really good stuff there. Someone needs to license this show because more people need to watch it.